Here's the story that I think proves this better than anything else. Reed Hastings, who co-founded Netflix, used to tell a story about being inspired by a 40 late fee at Blockbuster. It was clean, it was satisfying, it had a villain, the late fee, and a hero. Righteous frustration. His co-founder later said it never quite happened that way. The real origin was messier. Longer commutes, half-formed ideas, a slow accumulation of small, unglamorous decisions. But here is what I find genuinely fascinating. A company now worth hundreds of billions of dollars felt compelled to build its entire public identity around a 10-minute moment of ordinary frustration. Not a grand vision. Not a strategic insight. A parking lot and an irritating feeling. But you've already wasted it. Whatever it was, the morning, the year, the version of yourself you were absolutely certain you'd become. You've been waiting for the right moment. And here's the part that is genuinely difficult to hear. The right moment looks exactly like this one, which you are also waiting for. Now, before you click away thinking this is another video where someone tells you to wake up at 4:30 a.m., drink celery juice, and manifest your way to a better jawline, I want to be specific about who this is actually for. If you have ever finished a genuinely good self-improvement video, felt the motivation hit, maybe even opened a new note on your phone with one ambitious sentence in it, and then, by the following Tuesday, done absolutely nothing differently, this is for you. I'm not talking to people who have their lives together. I'm talking to the person with 17 tabs open right now. 3 of which are articles titled something like 10 Habits of Highly Effective People that you bookmarked in February and have visited 0 times since. That is my people. That is who I made this for. The third one is the one nobody in this space talks about. It is also the most powerful thing I'm going to say today, so stay with me all the way through. Here's the thing I need you to hear before we go any further, because this is the assumption that keeps most people stuck. We are completely, almost religiously, addicted to the idea of the dramatic turning point. The rock bottom. The diagnosis that changes everything. The conversation at 3 a.m., where someone finally says the thing that cracks you open. The moment when you hit a wall so hard that the only direction left is forward. We have been taught, by every story we've ever consumed, by every before and after we've ever watched, that real change requires a catalyst of equal size to the change itself. Real change apparently needs a cinematographer and a score by Hans Zimmer. But here's what actually happens when you sit down with people who genuinely turn their lives around. Not the version they tell at dinner parties, but the real, unglamorous sequence of events. It almost always traces back to something embarrassingly small. A conversation over bad coffee. A book picked up in an airport bookshop because the cover was orange. A walk was taken because they were restless, and their phone was charging in the other room. The moment wasn't cinematic. It was just a moment where someone chose differently than they had the day before. Because small moments are so recognizable, so true to how human beings actually change, that even the people who built something extraordinary want their story to start that way. The moment doesn't need to be big. It needs to be chosen. And I need you to stop waiting for the universe to arrange a big enough moment for you. Because the universe, I say this with complete affection, is absolutely terrible. Before I tell you what the 3 tools are, I need to explain why 10 minutes specifically. Because if you understand this, you'll actually do them. And that's the whole point. Here is a memory I want you to access. The last time you genuinely tried to start something new, a workout, a project, a difficult conversation you'd been avoiding. Do you remember the gap? That strange, almost physical gap between deciding to do it and actually doing it, where you somehow ended up reorganizing something, or checking something, or eating something, even though nothing was stopping you, where the distance between intention and action felt enormous for no logical reason. Sit in that memory for a second, because that gap is real. It has a name, and once you understand it, you stop blaming yourself for it and start working with it instead. Researchers call it activation energy, borrowed from chemistry. In any chemical reaction, you need a minimum threshold of energy just to initiate the process, before the reaction can sustain itself on its own. Below that threshold, nothing moves, regardless of how much potential energy is sitting there waiting to be used. Your brain runs on exactly the same principle. And here's the specific detail that changes everything. It takes roughly 7 to 10 minutes for the brain's prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for clear thinking, real decision-making, and overriding old patterns, to fully come online and outrun the part of your brain that just wants to. Stay safe, familiar, and horizontal on the couch. 2 minutes isn't enough. At 2 minutes, your reactive brain is still entirely in charge, whispering darkly about all the reasons this is a bad idea and how you could just as easily start tomorrow. 5 minutes is the edge. 10 minutes is the crossing. After 10 minutes, something genuinely shifts. The resistance doesn't disappear, but it quiets enough that you can move past it. The voice doesn't stop, but it loses authority. You're no longer fighting to begin. You're just doing. And here is the part that I think matters more than any of the rest of it. The finding that changed how I think about change itself. Behavioral psychologists have found that doing something once, intentionally, with full awareness, for even a short window, is enough to begin shifting your identity. Not your habits, not your routine, your identity. The story you tell yourself, silently, about who you are. Not, I'm trying to be someone who writes. Not, I'm working on exercising more. Something quieter and more fundamental. I'm someone who does this. And once that story starts to update, once you have even a single piece of evidence that you are the kind of person who acts, the habit doesn't feel like discipline anymore. It feels like consistency with who you already are. 10 minutes isn't a shortcut. It's an on-ramp. A way to give your brain one new piece of evidence, one true data point that changes the story you're living inside. Everything I'm about to show you is built around that window. Drop in the comments right now. Which area of your life feels most stuck? Career, relationships, health, or that low-grade hum of something is missing that doesn't have a clean name? Now, let's discuss the 3 tools that help you change your life. Tool 1, the clarity audit. I'm going to give you the tool first this time, before I explain it, because I want you to feel it land before your brain starts arguing with it. Set a timer for 10 minutes. Write your answers to these 3 questions. 1, what am I tolerating in my life that I've quietly normalized? 2, what would I do this week if I knew with complete certainty that no one was watching or judging me? 3, what is one thing I keep saying, eventually, about? And if I am being completely honest with myself, why have I not started? That's the clarity audit. That's the whole thing. Now, I can feel some of you thinking, that's it? I drove all the way here for 3 questions on a timer, and I want to gently point out that that's it, is exactly what your brain says about every action that is simple enough to actually work. Complexity feels like effort. Simplicity feels like it's not enough. And that distinction between what feels sufficient and what actually is where most people spend their entire lives making the wrong call. This is not journaling. I know what happened in your body when I said that word. This is not write about your feelings or explore your inner landscape. This is a structured interrogation of your own thinking, like sitting yourself down for a meeting that you've been finding reasons to cancel for the better part of a year. Here's why it works. Most people who feel stuck aren't missing information. They're missing clarity. There's a permanent fog of vague things that need to change that lives in the background of their mind like a browser tab that's been open so long it stopped loading properly. It creates noise. It drains energy. But it never crystallizes into a decision, because decisions require specificity, and the fog actively resists being specific. Thoughts in your head are negotiable. They soften. They make room for exceptions. They're subject to your mood, your energy level, and whatever you had for lunch. Words on a page are commitments. The act of writing, not typing, not thinking, writing, forces your brain to be precise in a way that internal monologue is specifically, almost cunningly, designed to avoid. Okay. The second tool, this one requires something the first one doesn't. Tool 2, the one reach. I want to describe a very specific physical experience that I think you will recognize. You are on your phone. You have navigated through some chain of links or recommendations to the profile or website of someone whose work you genuinely admire. You read something they wrote or watched, something they made, and it did something real to you, shifted something, clarified something, made you feel slightly less alone in a way that good work sometimes does. And you think, I should tell them that. I should reach out. You open a new message. You type something. You read it back. You delete half of it. You rewrite it. You read it again. It feels presumptuous. You change the opening. Now it feels too casual. You adjust the closing. Now it sounds like a corporate email written by someone who has never experienced a human emotion. You read the whole thing one more time. You hover, and then you close the app, put the phone down, and think, I'll do it when I have something more interesting to say. And then you never do, because there's never a version of you that feels interesting enough. That's not a self-esteem problem. That's just how human beings are built. Here's what the research on social reciprocity consistently and somewhat astonishingly shows. People overestimate, by a significant margin, how intrusive or presumptuous it feels to reach out to someone. And they underestimate by an equally significant margin how often people respond with genuine, warmth, not polite tolerance, actual warmth. Most people, including people whose work you admire, including people who receive a lot of messages, are genuinely moved when someone takes the time to say, this thing you made mattered to me. You are not an imposition. You are, in most cases, a specific and welcome interruption and an inbox full of things that need a response. You're the one thing that doesn't need anything back. The framework is 3 lines. I mean that literally, 3 lines. Line 1, who you are, and 1 specific, genuine observation about their work. Not, I love everything you do. Specific. Which piece, which argument, which decision you noticed, and why it landed. Specificity signals that you actually paid attention, which is, genuinely, rarer than it should be. Line 2, 1 direct ask or 1 piece of real value you can offer. Not a list. Not a paragraph of context. 1 honest, clear thing. A question you'd actually like answered. A connection that might be useful to them. Something real. Line 3, a no-pressure close. No response needed. Absolutely no worries either way. This line does more work than everything above it combined. It removes obligation, signals that you are a secure adult rather than someone refreshing their inbox every 40 minutes, and, counterintuitively, makes people significantly more likely to reply. Total time to write this thoughtfully, 10 minutes. Often less. I know someone who sent a message like this to an editor whose newsletter he'd been reading for 2 years. 3 lines. Sent at 11 p.m. on a Wednesday because he finally got tired of not sending it. The editor replied the next morning. That reply became a conversation. That conversation became a column. That column became the first piece of writing he was ever paid for, which became the thing he does now, full-time, with his name on it. 3 lines, 11 p.m., Wednesday. That's the whole story. Think of one person right now, someone whose work you follow, someone you keep meaning to contact. You already know exactly who I mean. Your brain produced the name before I finished saying it. That's your person. That's the message. You've been ready for longer than you've been willing to admit. You don't need to know where it goes. You just need to send it. Okay, I promised you the third tool was the one nobody talks about. I've been holding it since the opening of this video. This is it. And I want to ask you to stay present for this one specifically, because it's the quietest of the 3, and quiet things are easy to miss. Tool 3, the pattern interrupt walk. When I first heard this one, I thought the person suggesting it had simply given up. I want to be specific, almost forensically specific, about what I'm actually describing, because it is not go outside and get some air. That advice is fine. This is different. This is a 10-minute walk with 3 conditions. No phone, no music, no podcast. Yes, even the one you're currently 3 episodes behind on, and we're planning to catch up on during exactly this kind of walk. And before you leave, you write down 1 problem or decision you have been actively avoiding. Not to solve it. Not to arrive at an answer. Just to hold it consciously. The way you'd hold a question you genuinely want answered. While your body moves. Here's what happens in your brain when you do this. Walking produces what neuroscientists call bilateral stimulation, a left-right alternation of physical movement that activates both hemispheres of the brain in a synchronized rhythm. This is the same underlying mechanism used in EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is among the most rigorously studied treatments for processing experiences that the brain has struggled to integrate. The movement doesn't just exercise your body. It reorganizes the way your brain holds what it's been carrying. Stanford researchers found that creative output, the kind that produces new connections and genuine insight, not just productivity, increased significantly both during and immediately after walking. And the effect held even when participants walked on a treadmill facing a blank wall. It is not the fresh air. It is not the change of scenery. It is the movement itself, doing something to the architecture of how your brain is working. But here's the thing I want you to actually hold on to, because this is the part that nobody says plainly enough. Most of the decisions and problems you have been avoiding are not intellectual problems. You haven't been unable to solve them because you lack information or intelligence or perspective. You have thought about them extensively. You have run the loop at 2 a.m. when you couldn't sleep. You have processed them in the shower with the water going cold. You have sat with them during conversations where someone was talking to you and you were technically nodding, but actually somewhere else entirely, running the same internal calculation that never quite resolves. You are not stuck because you haven't thought hard enough. You are stuck because your nervous system is carrying it. The weight of an unmade decision lives in your body, in your shoulders, in the particular tightness behind your sternum when the topic comes up, in the way your breathing changes when you get close to the thing you've been avoiding. And you cannot think your way out of a nervous system that is holding something. You have to move your way out. The answer you've been circling might be 10 minutes of movement away. I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like the kind of thing that gets printed on a canvas and hung in a room with a diffuser and some fairy lights. But in the most literal, neurological, measurable sense, it is true. I want to try something for a moment, and I'm going to ask you to actually do this, not just listen to me describe it. Think about a year ago, this specific week, 12 months ago. Think about where you were. What were you doing? What you were telling yourself you'd fix or start or stop. What version of yourself were you planning to become once things settled, once you felt ready, once the timing made more sense? Now think about where you are today, right now, in this moment. If those two pictures are roughly the same, if the gap between who you were planning to be and who you are hasn't moved much, I want to ask you one question, not to make you feel bad, not as an indictment, just as an honest question between two people. What is it actually costing you? Not in the abstract. Specifically, what is the weight of carrying this particular version of yourself around, the one that knows something needs to change, that is known for a while, that keeps arriving at the same conclusion, and then finding reasons to defer it? What does it feel like in your body to live with the gap? Where do you actually feel it? I'm asking because that feeling, that specific physical weight of a decision that has been made in theory but not in practice, is the thing that these 10-minute tools are actually designed to address. Not productivity, not optimization. The relief, which is real and immediate and underrated, of having done one thing that is aligned with who you are trying to become. 1 year from now, you will be somewhere. The question, the only question really is whether you will have been the author of where that is, or whether you will have arrived there by default. And the difference between those two outcomes is not a grand plan or a perfect strategy or a morning routine that would make a Navy SEAL feel inadequate. It is a series of 10-minute choices, made when you didn't feel like it. Made before you were ready. Made not because the moment was right, but because you decided to stop waiting for it to be. You have already spent minutes with this idea. You already know which of the 3 tools you're going to try. You already know the person you need to send the message to. You already know the answer that's going to appear when you write down question 3. You've known for a while. You watched the whole thing. That means something. I'm not just saying that. Videos on self-improvement have a specific kind of viewer. Not someone who is casually interested. Someone who is genuinely tired of the gap between where they are and where they intended to be. Someone who is ready, even if they're not sure they believe it yet, to do something other than consume more content about doing something. Subscribe now before this tab closes. Drop a comment before you go. One of 3 answers. Clarity audit, 1 reach, or pattern interrupt walk. Whichever one you're starting with. Now, the last thing. In the next 10 minutes. Not after dinner. Not this weekend. Not after you send this to the 3 people in your life who also need to see it. Open your notes app or find something to write on and answer the 3 clarity audit questions. That is the entire ask. No plan required. No commitment to overhaul your life. 3 honest answers. One timer, 10 minutes. Part of you, right now, as I'm saying this, is already composing a reason why later is more practical. But it is the reason the gap hasn't closed. You don't have to defeat it. You just have to outlast it by 10 minutes. One time, right now. 10 minutes will not fix everything, but 10 minutes will do the one thing that nothing else has managed to do. It will prove to you with actual evidence that you can begin. And beginning, just that small act of choosing to move is the only thing that has ever changed anything real. Not readiness, not the right conditions, not when you finally feel like yourself again. Just the decision, made in an ordinary moment, to do one thing differently than you did yesterday.